Hello, hello. You are listening to The Long Game, and I'm your host, David Lee Kim, co-founder of Omniscient Digital. In this episode, we chat with Sophia Solanki. Sophia is a serial tech entrepreneur and content marketer with over 16 years of experience building products in the content and marketing space. She's currently the founder of Narrato, an AI content creation and collaboration platform that helps users ideate, create, collaborate, and publish all in one place, helping businesses ace their content and marketing game. In this conversation, we talk about the evolution of content marketing and how marketers should be using generative AI tools to be more effective and efficient. There are also some risks of generative AI, but Sophia points out that those risks existed way before generative AI existed. These are just tools, and their effectiveness ultimately comes from the human using them. The generative AI space is extremely competitive, and building a company in the industry can be very stressful. Sophia shares how she keeps a level head and keeps the company focused amongst all the noise. Here's my conversation with Sophia Solanki. Sophia, welcome to The Long Game.
Hi, David. Really nice to be here. And I'm very excited for the conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. There's plenty to talk about in the world of generative AI right now. And maybe before we jump into that, in my research preparing for this conversation, I learned that you previously ran a content agency. So similar to what I'm currently doing right now, you ran Godot Media before creating Narrato. I'd love to hear a bit about your story of running Godot, and then what it looked like to transition to Narrato and run a software company instead.
Yeah, absolutely. So Godot is an interesting story. So one, it's a spin on the word go and dot, because when we started, which was almost like 12 years ago now, internet was becoming very big for even smaller businesses. People were thinking websites at that time. Very soon they started thinking blog, social, and now there's YouTube. And there are like so many channels that you can't even count them. So we've seen the evolution come through. It's interestingly enough, we actually started building out a movies recommendation engine. And while we were doing it, we were hiring writers and creators to do a lot of the content for our website. And it just so happened that we had built a good set of folks who could create content really well. And then we put something out like a web page that if anybody's looking for help, we were a bootstrap business. We didn't mind some money flowing in. And we realized there was a big need a decade ago of good creators who could create content well and offer it to a wide range of businesses. So we started with that, and that's how Godot happened. Our movie recommendation website didn't do as well, so we have shut that down, and we instead started focusing on running Godot as a content agency initially, and then it became a content marketing agency where we also started advising clients a little bit. But so that's the start of Godot. But I'm an engineer myself. I was a business consultant before being an entrepreneur. I was working with large publishing firms, helping them figure out this strategy around operations. I've also worked with financial services firm. I helped them figure out how to use data, to be able to do better on the digital marketing. So engineering, business background, where it leads to, you start thinking products because they're exciting. They scale really well. They're fun building up. So started with Godot. We were running it for a good 7-8 years. And then we realized, it's so much fun building something. We were doing our own workflow solutions internally. So in the middle, we also did a product called Drummer, which was a social media content recommendations app. Had the generative AI models been what they are today, it would have been quite interesting because what it did was it actually gave you recommendations, but they were curation. It ended up being more of curation than creation at that point in time. But that was a good run. So we had a good successful exit out of that product, but we continued running our agency for a while, and then I wanted to build another product. And this time, I wanted to solve like a bigger pain point or a problem where we were seeing both our clients and us getting spread out on multiple tools, trying to switch between tabs to get the work done. So we started with the idea for Narrato that we want to build a workspace where you're able to come in, bring your team, create, collaborate, do the entire project management there, and find some of the tools that you use to create content there as well. So our first take on Narrative was a workflow and project management tool. So while this was a pain point, we realized with a lot of companies, and marketing teams, it seemed like it wasn't that. It seemed like that they were so deeply embedded in their processes. Just that alone wasn't enough to move them out of their Notions and ClickUps and whatever they were using. Which is when we realized the bigger gain to have is out of automating things to the level where you are actually creating content. And then all of the generative AI models became so good at doing it. And we realized that this power had to be given back to the team so that they can cut down the creation times by anywhere from 30 to 50%, maybe 80% in some cases, depending on the kind of content they're doing. So we started building out and layering on top of our workflow management platform, all the AI tools, which is to create content, to optimize, like we have SEO Brief Generator, which allows you to even optimize for SEO. And that worked. And that's where, people found immense value. And now you had one workspace where you could do a lot. You could plan, you could create, you could collaborate. And if you wanted to go ahead and automate things like publishing, etc., those options are available too now. So yeah, that's how the journey has been from Godot to Narrato. So good so far.
Yeah, it sounds like you were solving for a pain that you were feeling yourself of all these different tools. I'm feeling that pain myself, and you just described me where, I'm used to jumping between Google Docs and ClickUp and all these other tools to produce content, and the team's used to that. At this point, we might just take it as the status quo where it's just normal. And I've seen other products say that they can help streamline a lot of this stuff, but for some reason we haven't even thought of evaluating using them because it would change our entire process and all the Zapiers that we have set up and everything. So I'd like to get to this topic around generative AI and automating a lot of these workflows to make it easier to produce content. And maybe we'll start just at a high level before we jump in, because you were working or building an agency that had to do with like producing content. Maybe speaking from that experience to now, how have you seen content marketing evolve, particularly producing good content that actually ranks and drives business results? It seems like there's been a couple different changes over the last couple of years, particularly.
Yeah. I think it seems to change every year. Earlier it was all about Google updates. Now it's actually about how you create it as well. The last 1 year has been completely revolutionary in terms of how you're looking at content, because creating it has become just a prompt in ChatGPT or Bard or whatever you're using, or Claude. So I think the evolution has been, I think, pretty swift in this space, where content has, like I said, you started out as a website, then you had other channels, and you had to adapt to those channels. But what's changed in the last 1 year is that throughout that initial period of 10, 12, 13 years, where you were creating content, the content creation itself was particularly manual, which meant like you needed to have a big team of writers, creators. You had to manage them. You had to get the work happening. And then there was the whole issue around consistency and the quality that you're putting out. Now, what's really happening is, because of generative AI, a lot of the teams, marketing teams, are becoming leaner. They're realizing, for example, if you look at a large real estate business, you put out all of these property descriptions. There's absolutely no need, or an e-commerce business who are putting out product descriptions, for example. There's absolutely no need for a human to actually do this stuff from scratch. You can just have generative AI get your notes, inputs on those SKUs, and you can just do that within minutes. Like you can have 1,000 product descriptions generated out. And it makes perfect sense because it was never a big value add to have a large army of writers do that. So that shift is, I think, immense. It's happened really, really quickly. It does mean that there are creators who are not as busy as they used to be, but it also means that it's time for a lot of creators to upskill, to figure out how to add more value. Like once you have these 1,000 pieces of descriptions, how do you ensure that there's a good way to review it, for instance? Or if you're creating a blog piece, like if you get your first draft, how do you add value to it by bringing in information through primary research, doing interviews, collecting data, enhancing it, adding examples where the content becomes helpful. The content is not helpful in your introduction or your conclusion, which I think AI will give you a reasonable first draft for, and you can clean it up if needed. Where it's helpful is where you put in this additional effort of finding, collecting information, analyzing information. That's not public knowledge. So there's a huge shift. I think marketing teams are going to be much, much leaner now than they ever used to be. Creators who will thrive and do really well, probably even get paid very well now, will be folks who know how to use AI to do the work that's not as much value add, but do the work that is high value.
Yeah, it sounds like, and I'm hearing this from a lot of different people now that the hype around generative AI has died down a little bit, whereas maybe a couple of months ago, everyone's saying writers are going to be out of jobs and AI is going to do all the writing. But now people realize that maybe it'll help with the first draft, but it's not going to do all the work of interviewing subject matter experts or pulling from original research or anything like that. And that's where the meat of the content is, especially in differentiating from all the really generic AI content that's being produced. And maybe this really informs the way that marketing teams are staffed. You said that maybe marketing teams or companies in general are going to be able to run a lot more lean. So how do you think about what marketing team structures might look like, or new skills, or maybe not even new skills, but skills to look for in staffing up a marketing team now?
Yeah. So, and this is a trend that I'm noticing, working with a lot of companies, teams who are using Narrato as well. And the trend is towards having lesser but more strategists, really good quality copywriters working with agencies on really intense, good pieces of content. So this is a trend that's happening. So at least the companies who are really conscious about their brand and the content they are putting out, it's become more about, okay, let's use AI to do this stuff faster, but bring in a special set of people who are ready to put in the work to actually get that piece to the next level. So it's definitely AI as an assistant. I don't think it's going to replace human for the context and for the intelligence, the worldly intelligence and the data analysis or information that we bring in. But teams are definitely going leaner. Like almost everyone that I talk to, they are no longer just thinking about, like earlier in January, when I was speaking to companies and customers, they were just saying, oh, this is exciting. How do I use it? But people are actually using it at the moment. That's been a big shift. Like some of our customers on Narrato, they were using it initially, for example, to manage a team of writers. They were using one or two things. They will probably, just lightly touch those AI features to create or improve content, but they are now much bolder. They are actually doing more. They're trying to create longer drafts. They're trying to experiment, repurpose actually. So repurposing is a huge use case for AI, for instance. Like you've created this core seed piece, which is really solid. But after that, repurposing usually takes a lot more time. Like you'll probably want a video. You'll probably want a social media post. And you might want to convert that into a newsletter, for instance. And doing that manually, I think it's just really a waste of time and effort. Those really good, precious resources could be saved. And I think it's alike for agencies and marketing teams that they actually use AI to be able to do some of this repurposing, creating of content around the seed through AI much faster. So yeah, I'm seeing all that happen right now. People are more confident. They're not as scared. They're not so worried about Google penalizing content because you generated a paragraph of a long article and putting it out. And it's all legit. As long as it's assistive, as long as everything is fact-checked, there's a human in the loop, I think that's the way marketing teams will work.
Yeah, it's really helpful to hear those specific use cases of how they're using generative AI and using Narrato. And I contrast that with what I saw the other day so we had a lead come in and they booked a meeting with us. I had to do research on them to prepare. I looked at their website and I was just reading their blog to understand what they've done so far for content. And I thought, this content reads really weird. Like, I wonder if a human even wrote it. Like, that was the first thought that came to mind. And then I thought, wait, these author pictures look like stock photographs. So I did a reverse image search and they're all photographs or stock photos. And the names were all fake and everything. And I realized there was fake authors, AI generated content. None of it was ranking. And I'm like, oh my God, if I just happen to catch this one, I wonder how many of other blogs there are. And I don't know, maybe that's the risk of some folks using these tools. I'm going to say incorrectly because they're not going to get results from that type of content and no one's going to trust their content. So it was a little bit of a shame to hear that. And what you're saying is different, where you have that seed content and you have the original thought and ideas there, and then that gets repurposed using AI so that you don't have to do redundant work.
Yeah, absolutely. So David, what you noticed, for instance, I think that's been around forever. Like, it wasn't done by AI earlier, it was done by humans, but it was being done. So I personally know of several cases where we saw these huge, large blogs publishing like 5 to 10 pieces a day, and they were just rewrites of existing content on the internet. AI wasn't doing it; humans were. So I think that kind of spam always existed. That kind of not very useful content always existed. The means of doing that has changed, and creating these fake author profiles and putting them together. It's been going on for forever. Like, I've seen it through and through. I think it's just the shift right now that you're able to do it much easier and in a much shorter span of time, and you're spending less money doing it. But having said that, it's still pretty amazing, And I work with my content team, our content marketing team, very, very closely for Narrato as well when they're creating their content. And I see them that it's just for brainstorming itself, like when you want to start with what to write about. AI is very, very powerful. It comes up with 10 ideas. You can pick one, modify it, and start working with it. Then you're thinking, okay, what all should we talk about? Get a quick outline for that piece out of AI. And you'll probably not use 30% of it, and you'll add your own ideas. But that starting point makes it much easier than it used to be before, where you would spend like hours just coming up with a solid outline. So I think generative AI in content is a big enabler. And I think that's how teams and creators should use it, rather than do what you were doing with, not great writers, rewriting stuff, paying them not very well. So I think that story is a sort of, move from doing it in a manual fashion to an automated fashion. But it's probably going to stay around. Google is getting smarter. They know some of these authors are not real.
Yeah.
So I think it's how you look at the technology that makes all the difference. How you use it makes all the difference.
Yeah, what I frequently tell people is it doesn't matter what tools you're using. Like, it doesn't matter which email marketing tool or which generative AI tool, to be honest. It's just each one is going to help you do what you want to do and like more efficiently. So if you have a bad strategy and you already plan on producing really bad content, it's going to help you do more of that. So until you have a great strategy in place and you know how you're going to reach the right audience and all that, it doesn't matter what tools you're using. Like you're still gonna not see great results. The tool is not the thing that makes you successful. It just helps you be more successful. And I think I see this a lot with people who, they're jumping routine tool to tool and they're still not seeing any success. And the question that arises is, well, is it the tool or is it that you're doing the wrong thing? So it's helpful to hear you say like, yeah, this already existed before. It's just easier to do it now. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I'm absolutely on the same page. I think the core to success is how you build your content strategy, how you think about your audience. Because if you're not thinking about your audience, you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to download a bunch of keywords which seem to have a reasonable volume, and then I'm going to produce X amount of content about them without thinking about who you're creating it for, what value they're likely to get. And you're using briefs as that. A lot of our tools, including Narrato, generates as not as research material, but as something that you should just blindly follow, then it's not going to work. Now, you have a brief, and again, the tool is an enabler, right? So you have this brief, you have this additional intelligence that will take you hours to get. Now, as a human, as a content marketer, as a content strategist, you should spend that time looking through it, adding your own value, doing a little bit of research, use it as an enabling tool, and then work with it. And the results are much better, right? So you've thought about your audience, you've thought about what interests them, you're solving real problems. And then you're using all these tools to actually do some of your research, strategy, creation faster. It builds for a really solid, successful content marketing campaign.
Yeah.
So I'm totally on the same page.
Yeah, it's helpful to hear your philosophy on like content and marketing and everything, especially in the world of generative AI. And it feels like a lot more companies are coming up with their policies on how these tools should be used. Like my girlfriend works in biotech and her company released a policy of like, here are the things to use generative AI for, here are the things to not use it for. Like you can use it to summarize research papers, don't use it to write research papers, for instance, which seems obvious, but it's interesting that they even had that policy. And so now that we kind of understand your philosophy of like content and how these tools should be used, I'd like to focus more on Narrato because it seems to have grown quite a bit. There are a lot of great logos on your website. So I'd love to hear, you were talking about back in January, right? So many of these generative AI tools came out, all with their different messaging and positioning. I'm curious how you thought about how Narrato fits into the market and what you did to differentiate from the other tools.
Yeah. So it feels like we were already building for that differentiation because like I said, our thought process behind Narrato was to build a workspace where you could easily create and collaborate with the team, so that you're not having to shuttle between a lot of these different tools and apps. So that is what's the big differentiator. So we are not a point solution anymore where you go generate some content and work with it, but we are building to be a place where you can come work with your team. So if you're planning, for example, so you use our idea generator and all your ideas are then stored on our platform. You click on any of these, you get into a creation space where all of the AI tools, brief generators, optimizers are sitting on the left-hand side. So you have all of these tools on the left-hand side that you can use while you're creating the content. You want to optimize now your creation space, like, it could be a simple Google Doc, but then you say, hey, I want to capture more information. I want to capture some metadata I want to capture. So you can then templatize that. And then if you want to automate publishing to CMS, you can actually go ahead and do that. So you can build some of those really neat workflows on our tool which currently isn't the case with most of the point solutions that are in the market. They're doing some great stuff. They're building some great tools in a slightly different direction. But what we are focusing on is that, look, hey, as either whether you're a small marketing team or a large marketing team, we want to give you a space where you're able to work with your team, automate some of those things, and do it more collaboratively, as against, you copy paste from our tool, put it on a Google Doc, put it in a Drive, run the whole thing in a Trello board, and then connect a lot of these things with Zapier. So I think that's what makes us stick. That's what makes us work. We've also been very, very conscious of how we are building the UI. Also, we try to fit in the right tools at the right places. So you find them at places where they're most useful, so that you can quickly access, work with them. Like I was mentioning, our creation space is essentially a lot like a document. On the right hand side, on the left hand side is all the tools that you can just quickly access. You want to generate an image using AI. You just click on AI images, generate an image. You go to AI Writer, find your templates. Your chat is right next there. So if you want to, so that is where Narrato shines through. It feels more usable. It feels more connected. And so I think that's how we differentiate.
Yeah, it reminds me of we're big users of ClickUp, and I know their whole tagline is like one app to rule them all or something. It sounds like in this case you want Narrato to be the one stop for like any content production efforts. So instead of, like you said, writing Google Drive, we use ClearScope for SEO optimization, and then putting into WordPress, and then use Midjourney to produce an image, and then like reformat it and everything. It sounds like you're building more of a platform where you can do all this in one place instead of all these disparate tools.
Yeah. And I think it's really important also for us is to find them in a space where it doesn't get too complex, and which is a real challenge for us and our product team and our UI team as well. But yeah, I think that's what we want to really build.
Before we started recording, you mentioned this AI content genie, and you had said, you see a world where AI isn't just the creator, but also the marketer. What did you mean by that? Like, how does AI become the marketer?
Well, what I actually meant by that is that right now, what really happens is you put a prompt with one of the AI models or ChatGPT, or you go to one of the tools, you say, okay, create this for me or do this for me. So it's like one prompt at a time you're trying to do something, right? But essentially, when you're doing strategy building, there's a lot that goes behind the scene. Or for example, you have a set of tasks, even if you're not doing strategy building. For example, you've created a bunch of blog content and you say, I want to repurpose it in multiple ways, and somebody has to manually go and do that. But if some of this planning was taken care of by a tool, then you're relieving marketer of some of these tasks as well. So you start becoming a bit of a marketing strategist. And then as an evolution, what you can also do is you can start pulling in some of the data from the channels that you are, for example, publishing to, and using that data to inform what your next step should be. Right, so that there's a loop as well. So what we're doing with AI Content Genie is what we're putting out right now is that it takes two inputs. It takes your website. It takes some of the themes that you like to talk about often or create content around. And then we crawl your website. We try to see what's important to you, what you're putting out. We look at your themes, and then on a weekly basis, we're generating content recommendations, or we do it right now for social media. Very soon, we'll also try to do it for blog, so that you get your first drafts, you get these ideas. You can discard some of them, you can keep some of them. So you're doing some of that work more automatically. So we're making life of a marketer much easier. So rather than having to come up with all of these ideas and then going and creating, we're doing that in the background with these simple inputs. And of course, we want to improve, we want to add more data in and do make those recommendations even stronger. So that's sort of the idea.
Yeah, that is amazing. I'm getting chills as you say this because you'd be really solving a pain point. So if I could share how I'm seeing it, it's like you log in and Narrato is connected to Google Analytics. Maybe not right now, but Google Analytics, Google Search Console pulls the SEMrush API and it says, hey, we found these articles are losing rankings. You could optimize them. Here's the link to go optimize it. Or, hey, we noticed that you write about these topics. We found some additional topics related to that you should write about. Click to approve and we'll create a brief for you or something like that. Like all of the diagnostics and everything are surfaced for the marketer.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but at the moment, what we do really well is, and David, if you try Genie, it's basically trying to understand you better using what input you give, mostly from your website. And there are some simple things, you do want your most recent content repurposed into social media content. So we do that at the moment. Very soon, in a couple of weeks, we'll have a release where you'll start getting blog ideas. You'll probably get outlines as well. Mm-hmm. So it's part of the work done, right? If you want to convert them into an entire article, you can, and then you can enhance it, add in all that really great research. You'll be able to do that. But just this enough is, I think, nice because you have like 20 ideas and then you say, okay, I'm going to keep 5, but there's so much less time involved in doing that. And this content is already done. Like for social media, like my team completely uses AI Content Genie. For some custom posts, it's using some of our templates to generate all the content. So the process really is they know what they want. For example, if they're creating from notes, they put the notes, they get the post, and then they clean out. The cleaning out process is taking them maybe under a minute. Creating an entire social post text used to take them much longer. There was a lot of thought you had to put behind what should be our clickbait intro, what should be your CTA, what should go in the middle. So it's I think it's amazing what you can actually do with it, and not having to actually then make a plan of what all you're going to put on social media, but some of that getting done by Content Genie. Has made their life even easier. Now they're just looking through the recommendations saying, okay, we can pick these 5, these look great and perfect. And then we add these 2 announcements as additional information we wanted to do. So it's literally cut down the time to market significantly. So I think AI is a huge enabler.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I've tried many of these generative AI tools and new AI-powered SEO tools, and they each carve out a different combination of things that they want to improve. And I think so far, this conversation with you is the first time I've heard this vision for what AI can do to help support like marketers and content marketers with the whole process and bringing all those tools together. So I'm personally very excited to hear what you say your team is building, and that's really exciting to hear. I'm curious, maybe for you, you mentioned how some customers in your teams are using Narrato. How are you currently using like AI tools in your day-to-day, whether it be Narrato or any other AI tools?
Yeah. So right now, I'm personally, and I can talk about my marketing team as well. I'm personally using it for email. So I really like just having a few notes, putting it in, getting the email draft, cleaning it out and sending. That saves time. But
is that Narrato for emails? Or
yeah, I do use Narrato. Yeah. So we just use Narrato because it does pretty much all we wanted to do. We have a chat there, so if you want to do some custom prompting, we can just do it on the platform, which is why this integrated solution sort of works really well. But my team right now is using Narrato for creating first drafts of video guides that they're about to put out. They're using it to create some parts of their blog as well. For example, if they're doing an intro, they get like 3 versions of it, see what's sounding good, modify, work with it. It uses it to generate outlines, ideate. My team's using it for social media, like I just described. They have used it for press releases, I think no human should create press releases because that first draft comes out very well. You just put the notes that you take from your client, for instance, if you are an agency or if you are doing the press release yourself, just put it in our press release template, get the press release, and then clean it out. It's just as good. So lots of different things. Like some of our clients, for instance, have been using it for generating product descriptions, event descriptions, property descriptions. Some of our the real estate companies are using it for that. And my marketing team is basically using it from everything from ideation, some bit of planning because you could do keyword research, not to trust what it says, but get the first set of ideas and then going back to your regular keyword tools or Google Keyword Planner, which get it from the horse's mouth. And then work with it. And then they use it also to repurpose a lot of content that they have already done. So, but it's really improved the productivity. It's good. We are not having to look out for more resources to do what we're doing. So yeah, it's been pretty good.
Yeah. So you've been an entrepreneur for a while now. And I mean, being a founder, it could get quite stressful, especially when you're building an AI tool with all these competitors. One of our colleagues who works at a similar company has said working in generative AI is an extreme sport because Google's always releasing something new. OpenAI is always releasing something new for you to react to. How do you decompress and make time for yourself with all this noise going on in the industry, particularly, and kind of keeping a cool head?
Yeah, honestly, it is very, very stressful. It does take it. So my day starts really early in the morning. It's ending pretty late in the morning. I think the only way I've been able to keep sanity is by saying weekends are sacrosanct. These are the 2 days where I'm not trying to stay away from any screen, computers as much as possible. It's never perfect, but those are the times where you just need it for yourself, your family, some exercise, which is I think extremely critical because when you do a lot of mental work, I think your body needs a lot of physical work along with it, and and that sort of then helps. It's never a perfect balance, but that's how I try to keep up. But that's really, really true. Right now, it sounds very exciting to be building with Gen AI in the space, but the space is extremely competitive. It's changing all the time. So it's really hard to keep up because your engineers are always having to rebuild, look at things differently. It's getting better, more exciting. There's more ways marketers can use this. There are more use cases. But if you're building, it's actually a tough place to be in. Like the model itself starts behaving very differently than it was behaving 15 days ago, and then your output is no longer what you had optimized for. So it is quite interesting.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that. So yeah, with everything going on in the industry, how do you? I'm not too sure how to phrase this because it just came to mind right now, but how do you stay focused when there's so much noise? Like, how do you decide what to pay attention to or what to react to versus things to just ignore? Do you have a framework for how you do that?
Yeah, so I think being a smaller company, we know our resources are limited, so which also means that we need to prioritize much better. So we decide that, look, here, we see that a lot of our competitors are doing X. So that's not what we want to go after. There's, of course, you have to, as the technology improves, it does better or it does different. You have to keep rebuilding a little, optimizing. But at the same time, you want to have a focal strategy or a focus on what we're building. For example, for us, it's been Content Genie right now. And that's where all the team has devoted the attention to. We have 20% of the bandwidth to manage, rebuild, relook at things, but 80% of the bandwidth goes into what we think is the future, and then we build for that. And of course, what's the future, the time will tell, but at least it helps you focus. and not spread yourself too thin, which is very easy. That's how we have been working.
Yeah, it's always interesting for me to observe as an outsider what whether it be Narrato or Jasper or Ryder or all these other companies, what you all decide to focus on, because what you choose, like you're saying, there's so many different use cases for AI, as, even if you narrow it into marketing, and you essentially have to say no to all these other use cases to focus on the ones that you say you want to focus on. So it's a fascinating exercise in prioritization, and I respect the I guess intensity with which you have to focus. Otherwise, you end up trying to build something for everyone, and that never works.
Yeah, that's very, very true. I mean, the world's not perfect, we're not perfect, but you at least strive
Yeah,
for that. So yeah, it's
yeah.
it can be tough sometimes.
So, is there anything maybe I haven't asked about that you'd love to share with the audience, maybe related to Narrato or anything about what you're building?
Um, I think I just want the audience to come try us out. That'll be pretty amazing. We've
Yeah.
been thinking very differently about AI and content marketing. So, like I mentioned, we are a workspace. We are built to do more than just generate content, but to actually help you do a lot of this more efficiently. But yeah, essentially that. And I just mentioned that you uh, heard me talking to David, and it'll be great. And I'd love to make sure that I'm personally involved with whoever wants to try Narrato out.
Amazing. Well, I think I have a couple quick questions, and we'll start wrapping things up.
Sure.
All right. What is one opinion you have about business you think people would disagree with?
Yeah. So that's sort of a tough one because I think most of the things that when I think about, people have thought about it, but really, I think when you're building a business, if to my mind, there's no single recipe to it. I mean, there's no pattern. Like what will become a huge, great, big success? There is really no recipe. There's so many variables and so many different ingredients that trying to emulate and follow a pattern will take you just so far. You'll have to figure out what your dish is going to look like, because, and your audience could be very different from whoever you are taking an inspiration for. So there's no single recipe. The second thing that comes to mind is that building teams is again really hard, and that's also recipe building. Um, and teams have A players, B players, C players. A players will drive you, B players will move you, C players do nothing or probably hurt. But it's hard to put this structure and talk about it like this, but it's really, really hard, for instance, to have the folks who drive things with you. Team building is probably the hardest thing you'll do. Sometimes it's harder than market creation. Sometimes it's harder than um, marketing itself, or figuring out what your product priorities are. So honestly, I mean, throughout my entrepreneurship journey, this is the thing which I think is one of the hardest. So when you find a great team, I think that's the recipe you want to keep. But other than that, in business, what will work? In fact, if you're an entrepreneur, you know what your strengths are. You go to a different business, and it will all be all different again. You can't. You'll probably be able to use some of what you did in your last business, but a lot of it will have to work differently. You'll have to look at things differently. So, yeah. So I think that's one
Yeah.
learning I have. I don't know if people will disagree. Maybe most people will agree, but that's what I know about businesses. There's no rule.
Yeah, we're going through a hiring process right now, and I think in our first week we had like 200 or 300 applications. So we had to sift through a lot of people. We've narrowed it down a lot, but even at this point, it feels tough. You can never be 100% sure. But I'm curious, through your time building teams, have you found like, do you have one favorite way to screen for the A and B players? I know it's not possible to hire only A players. At least that's going to be hard to do. But if you have both A and B players, you can do a lot with them. But so, do you have a favorite way of screening for them?
Um, uh, this is time consuming, but I think it could be one of the ways. If you can actually work with them before you hire them, you will know. But it doesn't work that way because when a candidate is active, he he or she is, or they are interviewing with multiple folks. There are
Yeah.
not many candidates you'll find who will be ready to do small projects with you before you agree to hiring them. But if you can, I think that's probably the best way to figure out A from B to C. So so yeah, I mean that's otherwise it's hard. It's like
Yeah.
it's hard to figure out an interview what works, what you don't work. You learn with experience, but you will never have the perfect solution to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So then, what's one impactful piece of advice you've been given?
Um, about product building, I think the most impactful piece of advice I've been given is that don't be stuck with your ideas. If you think this is it, it may not be it, which means that be open to experimenting, changing, rebuilding, breaking everything down, and do this quick. Like, have a timeline, say, okay, we are going to we want to try experiment with this new idea, new feature. We're going to put it out, do it in 2 months, put it out, have users test the feature and get feedback. But getting stuck with your ideas can often be a death spiral for you because you feel very dearly about them, but that might not be what your market wants or what your users might want. So experimenting, being nimble on the feet, creating new stuff quickly, being open to killing stuff that's not working, which is hard, but is necessary many times, I think is very critical. So I've had a few of my really good advisors say that often, and I think that holds true for all kinds of product building.
Yeah, that really resonates both as a marketer and as a previous like product manager where we'd build an MVP, still took a couple sprints to build, and then it didn't work out. So my engineering team and I would have to sit there and like we made it a very ceremonial thing. Like, hey, we're cutting this out now. Like we're having a meeting to talk about it, and at the end of this meeting, it's going to be out of the product, so that we at least give us some sort of ceremony to say like, hey, we did our best, but it's not going to work. It's okay. We have other things we're going to work on, but it's never easy, even when you know it's the right
Yeah.
decision to do. Yeah.
Yeah. It hurts. It's effort, right? You've put in that effort
Yeah.
for a couple of months.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes I've heard teams put in months, years into it, and then just saying goodbye is hard.
Yeah. What's one book you'd recommend more people read?
The Selfish Gene. I think it's amazing. The reason why I recommend reading this and everyone should read is because it's a good way to feel less self-important and realize, and also some of those existential questions that you have about yourself, etc. It settles a lot of them in a very, very great way. Um, it's a good, of course, it's a great piece of scientific read as well. But other than that, it gives some answers to why you are there, what's the meaning of things, and you
Yeah.
feel a little more. Uh, you feel like you found why things are and why you exist, and it just is great. Otherwise, it also shows you a good way to think about things, to think about your relationships, things about with the world, with family. So I think it's a great book. I think everybody
Yeah.
should
You
read
said
it.
that was The Selfish Gene by
Yes.
with Richard Dawkins. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. That I had not heard of that book before, but it sounds exactly down my alley of trying to understand why we're here and realizing this is it. This is life. Make the most of it. I appreciate that. Adding it to my Amazon cart now. All
Yeah.
right. Wrapping up here, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on LinkedIn. So that's pretty easy. Look up Sophia Solanki, Narrato pops me up. Um, Otherwise, just drop me an email. It's very easy. Just sophia@narrato.io. I do get a lot of emails
Yeah.
that are about how to run outbound campaigns and stuff, but it's okay. I'll figure that way out of how to move them on.
Those emails might be written by AI as well. I'm getting a lot more of those recently.
Yeah.
So
Then again, these were getting written by humans earlier and they were equally useless then. So I don't blame AI for those emails. It's probably the humans behind them.
Outbound emails are always gonna exist. Well, Sophia, it was a pleasure to have you on a show. Thanks for making the time.
Yeah, it was great chatting with you, David. Thank you.